Let's get straight into it, Joe. This week is, of course, the last international break where Lee Carsley is in temporary charge of England, of course, before Thomas Tuchel steps into the hot seat in January. Is tasked with attempting to bring football home.
Luck,
Wouldn't that be good?
Good luck.
Where's the confidence?
Good luck, Thomas.
Of course, by trying to win the 2026 World Cup. And a lot of people talking about the kind of players that he'll be using, the kind of system that he'll be utilising, which gave us an idea for our next section, didn't it?
Absolutely. This is a tough one. Nieve, this is on your shoulders. You're going to be picking the 26 players that Thomas Tuchel will end up taking to the World Cup in 2026. Now, this is obviously a long way away, so you're going to have to really predict hard here. You have to have a good prediction on who's going to have big upswings. Yes, your thoughts throughout the entire thing. We've got about 40 or so of the most talked about names, some interesting topics we've picked here.
Yeah, I think that's worth pointing out as well. Obviously, this is difficult because it's a long way in advance. We can't have a magnet for every single player involved because there would be 100 magnets. So we've gone with the ones that are most talked about, and this is your picks, isn't it?
Yeah.
OK, let's start with the keepers. Is Pickford nailed on as England's number one for you?
Yeah, I do believe so.
Are all three nailed on? Just get them up, I reckon.
Yeah. Pickford's going to be in sticks, isn't he, I think?
You're going Pickford. Who are the other two keepers?
So I've got Ramsdale and I've also got Dean Henderson, but Nick Pope, James Trafford. It's just, it could be a whole host of goalkeepers, but Pickford to start.
Pickford's England's number one, isn't he? Surely that's...
Yeah, I have no qualms about the goalkeepers. Yeah, I agree with that.
OK. Easy start.
Right,
which is good because
not a bad thing. How do you want to do this now then, Nick?
Right backs.
Go with right backs first because again there's lots to choose from.
Potential
Who have you
options.
gone with as how many right backs have you picked?
Who do you think won't?
Yeah, because I think we've got Rico Lewis here, but I wouldn't actually put him right back.
OK.
But I suppose we could just put him
versatile enough to play there, isn't he?
there.
I think he's definitely going to go, isn't he?
So we've got Rico Lewis.
Yeah. I think Pepper's given him the second most minutes of any teenager in his managerial career, Rico Lewis. So
Reece James.
Reece James.
Do you think he's going to be fit enough in 2026, Nieve?
I'm hoping so. I think looking at Tuchel and the way he played with Chelsea and how Reece James fit into that team, I'm just sort of more, it's wishful thinking because he would be such a vital player to have.
Yeah.
Can I just get Lias's thoughts on Reece? Obviously, incredible player, but if you look at Joe and I were looking at his sort of the amount of injuries that he's had recently and obviously minutes to game and everything, how much of a concerning factor would that be going into a tournament if he is fit but hasn't put up the minutes, so to speak?
Of course, it's a major concern, but this is kind of like risk to reward. And I think when you have so many brilliant right backs that England do as well too, I think you bring him just because maybe if he's not there, OK, it's not the end of the world if you go for... And maybe you even start Trent and Reece James is almost the insurance policy. But I just think the quality that he gives you, his ability to, like, physicality, defensively going forward, I think he's the kind of X factor that you bring regardless, in my opinion.
He had one appearance at the Euros in 2020, but missed both the 2022 World Cup and Euro 2024 through injury. Got to talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold. Would he be the starter for you, Nieve?
You hope so. But it's entirely dependent on what Tuchel decides to do. I'm of the belief that with international football, you have your idea of how you want to play, and then you fit the players in afterwards. You don't pick the players first. So it just totally depends on what he decides to do.
What big names are missing out then? Which big names in the fullback area are going to go in the stay-at-home column for you?
So Kyle Walker.
We're not taking Kyle Walker.
That's a big talking point. Captain of England midweek.
I think...
Why would you not take Kyle Walker? Obviously, it's an area where England are blessed, as you said. It's an area we've got a lot of good talent.
Yeah, and I almost feel as if my problem with Kyle Walker in the last sort of year or two is that his weaknesses have crept into his game more and more and started to take over his strengths. And so I don't think the Kyle Walker that we would get is the one of past. And I almost feel as well as if we take him and we feel the need to start him all the time, it only really lends itself to playing a certain way when we're higher up the pitch and we needed him as a bit of pace to recover. Whereas, you look at the Euro final when we were a bit deeper and we let Spain onto us, it didn't really make sense having him on the pitch with his skill set. So, no, I wouldn't take Kyle.
Yes, just quickly, would you take Kyle or would you agree?
I wouldn't take Kyle Walker. I think every year you're starting to see a decline, and it's natural, right? He's played a lot of minutes in his Premier League career. I think he's a player that's always been highly reliant on his pace, his recovery pace, and he's been a great servant for England. But I also think of England under this new manager, the idea, the priority has to be how can we assert our strengths over the opposition rather than be reactionary towards them. And I think playing guys like Trent and Reece James makes you a better team on the ball. It makes you more dominant in possession rather than, especially what Kyle Walker is in today's game.
Any other right backs you want to talk about, Nieve?
Yeah, so Tino Livramento is a potential option as well. Tino Livramento would be above Kyle Walker in the pecking order
I
now.
thought you'd have him in your squad, actually.
I just think there's lots of players. He could be one of them, and because he can play on the left, it could be him. I mean, I've actually got on the left-hand side, I've got Lewis Hall in my 26-man squad.
He's in there.
Because he's left-footed on that left-hand side, and it's a position we need. But if it ended up being Tino Livramento going and playing on that side, then I'd understand that.
You'd think one of Lewis Hall or Tino Livramento would make the squad, wouldn't you?
Yeah, at least.
You might have to get Lias's help sticking that one up. So is that all of your full-backs? Is there any others you want to talk about that are going home or are staying?
Perhaps you might want to question Luke Shaw. I don't know. You might. For me, he stays at home.
He's unreliable.
Is that just injuries? Is that...
Yeah, and I know it's a bit contradictory to what we just said about Reece James, but I just think with Luke Shaw, there's so much bigger of a sample size of just missed time. And I think you look at the fact he hasn't played for Man United since, what, March?
Not played a club game since February 2024.
That's incredible.
For me as well, I feel like there's only so many risks you can take, so you've got to pick the risks you want. And I think with Tuchel and his relationship with Reece James, I would be more inclined to take the risk with Reece James than take the risk with Luke Shaw or Ben Chilwell.
It's a fair point, that, actually. I don't know if you remember Gareth Southgate did say when Maguire and Shaw were not included, he said he can take one risk, didn't he? Because Luke Shaw wasn't fit and Harry Maguire wasn't, and he took Luke Shaw as the risk, so to speak, knowing what he can do. Because he's clearly a quality player, but it is, again, it comes back to the injury record.
I think you looked as well, too, right?
England unbelievable in the Euros. The Euros that England got to the final.
He's a quality left back. When he's fit, he's one of the best left backs on the planet, and I still believe that. But it's the fitness, but the only question I would have is there enough left-sided options? And I think that's also a big reason why he did take Luke Shaw. He was the only natural left-sided defender in the squad. So I think that would be my only question.
Funny you should talk about that, because there are two players in the Championship right now. 18 months is a long time in football, isn't it? And there are two players right now in the Championship that, let's say Tuchel decides to go over back three, and when I show you my centre-backs, you might actually think, we could do a back three here. And that's Harrison Burrows at Sheffield United and Dennis Sirkin at Sunderland, who are both playing quite attacking on that left-hand side, look really comfortable. You never know in football, so they're two players to keep an eye on.
2 years is a long time.
So which centre-backs? Should we do all your centre-backs? Have a look at how they're all going to lay out.
So
have a look at the centre-backs that are going first.
And so we've got Ezra Konsa.
Yeah.
I like it. Can play on the right as well.
John Stones.
Got to go, surely.
Jared Branthwaite.
I like that.
Yeah.
Matt Gahey.
I like that.
And Levi Colwill. Five
and that means
centre-backs.
who misses out with those lists?
That means, well, here we've got Maguire and Ben White, who are missing out.
So Maguire's another big omission in terms of, obviously, game time he's had for England, and obviously it's an area where England have had injuries in the past. But so fully fit everyone, you wouldn't have either of them.
I don't. Yeah, I think with Ben White, it's more a case of there was a time when we could have really done with Ben White in these last couple of years in which he obviously didn't want to. We're now in a position where I think Ben White is brilliant. Do I think we desperately need him with the options we've got? No.
Okay.
And if Tuchel makes the call that he would rather have Ben White, I accept that, that's fine. But I like the idea of being in a position where we don't rely on a player making a decision if he actually wants to play or not.
OK.
I hear it.
Who would be of interest if you're starting two? Presumably we are playing with a two. If everyone's fit, who would you have as your starting centre-back pairing?
I think if we start with a two, at the current moment, I think if it's two, Stones and Gahey, just because of the way the relationship they're building. However, Jared Branthwaite is naturally left-footed, and also throughout the season, as we see more from him and his sort of pace and physicality, that could be really beneficial for us.
Gay was excellent, wasn't he, in the Euros?
Yeah, brilliant.
He was, yeah.
I think as well, you've got Ezra Konsa there and Levi Colwill who can often cover a fullback.
Yeah, exactly,
I noticed. Yeah, no, I think that those options, they're versatile. They all offer you a little bit something different. Each partnership would be quite good. Yeah, I'm a fan of that.
Nieve, we've realised that we've probably, and this was an error on our part, not giving you enough room.
To stick it all up.
Players. So I don't know who's
Yeah, you might have to move everything down a little bit.
Everything down a bit, slightly. Yeah, if Lyes can help you while we go into the midfield areas, I'll
There's a lot
continue
of players,
to
isn't
fill and pad the discussion.
It's a team effort.
Excellent magnet replacement if we just move the home flag.
That's all right. We can do the home flag. It's fine. Right,
So let's go on to midfielders. Should we pick a few of the sort of holding midfield players and
the obvious ones?
Some obvious. So
Jude
not-
Bellingham is obviously going to be
Just a couple of obvious midfielders I'll put in.
Let's get the obvious ones on there, because
stick with
Jude's
that.
definitely going to go, isn't he? Declan Rice. These are the guys that you would think could be starters, Lyes?
Yeah, no, 1,000%. Yeah, you look at guys who are the cornerstones of your team. You're going to build around them, the spine of your team. You look at those two guys, I think.
Do you think Jude Bellingham, because obviously there's so much competition in the 10, where we're going to come on to in a little bit, can play in a deeper role for England? Because that is a debate it's had, isn't it? Could you play him alongside Rice?
Well, I think it's really. I've been really thinking about this, and I would never do like a Bellingham, Rice, and then a purely attack-minded midfielder with them.
I agree.
But I now actually think we've got a number of midfielders that could play along Bellingham and Rice, who. For example, Curtis Jones, who are a bit more comfortable deeper as well, because my big problem with England in major tournaments is when we sit back against teams, when we do get the ball, we find it hard to build up the play ourselves and get it up to our attacking players. So I think actually looking at some of our options, and I'll throw a few more on the board now, we've got a lot of midfielders that are really comfortable on the ball who can play deep with those two.
Does he go in for you, Curtis Jones?
Oh, he's a nailed on.
You would have gone to the Euros
Yeah.
for me, honestly. I would have taken to
Same
the Euros.
Okay.
Obviously, debut in the week, goal,
Yeah.
man of the match. Brilliant. Kobbie Mainoo, I'm presuming he's on the plane.
Yes, I've got Kobbie Mainoo.
Yeah. I completely agree with you as well, too. And I think one thing with Thomas Tuchel, you look at his entire managerial history, he always prioritizes a deep-lying midfielder, whether it was at Dortmund, PSG with Verratti, even Bayern. He's the one that brought in Pavlovic himself.
Yeah.
So
Desperate to get a Bellingham.
yeah, no, that's a huge. And Jorginho, honestly, was revitalized under Thomas Tuchel. So I see that as a position that England, for me, have massively underutilized. You had Michael Carrick at one point; he couldn't get a sniff in, and I think that's something that England have really missed—a deep line controller.
Yeah.
Tough competition. To be fair to Carrick, they're tough competition ahead of him.
Yeah, but balance is arguably more important at international football than just individuals.
Yeah, that was a good
totally
key
agree.
issue.
And perhaps a little bit more of a rogue option.
I like him.
Is
You're a big fan of
Archie Gray.
Archie Gray,
I'm a
aren't you?
huge fan of Archie Gray, and I watched Tottenham v Galatasaray, and he played left back.
Yeah.
And when he had a moment further up the pitch where he had a bit of time on the ball, that pass he made into the box,
Exactly what you mean.
unbelievable. But he shouldn't have been playing as left back.
Is that an issue? Obviously, I'm a Spurs fan, I watch a lot of Tottenham, but he's been utilised in a variety of positions. You mentioned left back, right back, centre mid. Does he need to have a regular position in order to then become in the mindset of an England manager? Is it helping him playing in all these positions, or do you think it'd be more beneficial if he did start playing regularly?
Yeah, I think it'd be more beneficial if he could play in central midfield so that Tuchel can see what he was when he played because he played right back at Leeds, but he did play central midfield a few times. And I think his awareness of the space around him and his timing of coming into duels with the midfielder, he used to track their sort of number 8 midfielder, he used to track that player very well. So Tuchel would see these qualities and think, oh, there's a bit of security there, and we know that he's brilliant on the ball.
Okay.
Okay.
Should we just reveal the rest of the midfield magnets you've got? Because some are going to be at home, some are going to stay. Just so you reveal the names that you've spoken about. Maddison.
James Maddison
at home for you.
I've also got these two guys at home as well, Mason Mount and Adam Wharton.
Adam Wharton, wow.
So I think the reason, just out of curiosity, we've selected Mason Mount on there is because he obviously had such a connection with Thomas Tuchel.
Sure.
Right? I think people at home will be saying, why is Mason Mount being selected as a magnet? But he had such a connection with Thomas Tuchel that was playing his best football under him. Is there a world you see Mason Mount potentially getting another shot in the future in that England setup?
Well, let's see how Mason Mount copes in with Amorim. It could all change in a season, couldn't it? You know, we know there's a player in there, and like you've just said, so this is not. I'm not suggesting that there's a no there, but.
I think there's a variety
We
of
have to
players
see.
in these roles as well. We should give credit to the likes of Angel Gomez, the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White. We couldn't print every magnet, but are there any names?
This one for me is surprising. Again, when you talk about that deeper player who isn't afraid to have high volume touches, he isn't afraid to keep it ticking. I would be taking him. For me, Conor Gallagher is always the one, in my opinion. Yes, he provides tremendous value in terms of his work rate, winning the ball up. Actually has a decent eye for goal as well, too. But I will always prioritize ball retention, especially at international football. I think Conor Gallagher is definitely a player that in certain situations you want a guy like him,
But I think over the stretch of an entire tournament, I would be prioritizing the likes of Jones and Adam Wharton.
Now, I think Adam Wharton, it would make more sense, let's say, it would maybe be someone like an Archie Gray or an Adam Wharton.
Maybe.
With Conor Gallagher, I wouldn't be looking at those two as because, you know, you say prioritise ball retention, but for me personally, I prioritise versatility, prioritise being able to play and adapt against the different nations you play. And we won't always have a lot of the ball. And I actually think Conor Gallagher would be brilliant in those games, like when we played Spain, when we were allowing them to have more of the ball, and we maybe want a disruptor, someone who could have pinpointed Rodri. You know, Foden had the job of pressing Rodri in that first half. Conor Gallagher, I think, could have disrupted him even
I hear
more.
you did a good job for Chelsea. I just look at Jude, Declan Rice, Curtis Jones. For me, these are guys that offer more, in my opinion, on the ball than Conor Gallagher, but they're also very good defensively as well, too. But I hear it as well,
It's nice to have an option, I think, as well.
enough.
On your bench, you can utilise who's a totally different option as well. A bit like someone like a Rodrigo de Paul for Argentina, where, you know, not every player will match the quality on the ball, although he is good. You've got that tenacious sort of ground movement player as well, so who can help get the most out of those guys. You know, the Declan Rice, the Bellingham, the Curtis Jones.
OK, let's move on to the forward areas, because there's a lot of big players here. Now, Nieve, I want to bring up a clip that an opinion you had that went absolutely viral after yours, because you mentioned famously that you were concerned with Foden and Bellingham, the system that England might utilise in the Euros playing together, and how it might not get the best out of them. And obviously that clip went viral after various England performances. Two undoubtedly top players, but just sort of elaborate on that and where you think England would be best suited under Tuchel.
Yeah, I think with Foden, the thing I was always really cautious about is that, we saw it materialise in that Spain match that I keep alluding to, is that in the first half, I thought he did a brilliant job actually marking Rodri, but in the second half, you'll notice that he was maybe pressing of the mindset as an attacker, and maybe actually Kane being on the pitch and being quite a passive presser meant that he felt the need to press higher up the pitch. But what that meant was that there was quite a big gap between him and then Bellingham and Rice. And then I feel like that meant that Bellingham and Rice were in two minds about who they would go and mark, and it kind of messed up the whole system, and it just meant that England felt a bit late to react to moments because they were filling in for that extra bit of space. And I think that was just purely down to the imbalance in the team, and it gave people a bit too much to do. Whereas if you've got midfielders and balance that suit the space, then you're not going to have that problem.
Do you think Cole Palmer should have had more minutes in the Euros? Interesting quotes, wasn't it? He was saying about there was games that he was on the bench thinking he was surprised he wasn't getting game time, and actually he made the point that if he was coming on and wasn't influencing games, he'd have understood it. But it goes to show you how much, you know, how the confidence that he has in himself and the confidence that he has. A phenomenal player. Do you think that there will be a time now where Cole Palmer is going to become one of the first names on the team sheet, or is it just hard because of the amount of players
I think
in his position?
It's so difficult to predict. Look, I have this opinion that Jude Bellingham is at his best the higher up on the pitch he is. The closer you get him to the penalty box, and Ancelotti has mirrored this opinion, the closer you get him to goal, the more you unlock Jude Bellingham's best qualities. Yeah. I think his versatility is a curse here because he can play deeper, he can play as an 8. Yeah. And you want to get your best attacking guys in. You want to get Cole Palmer in. But my only worry is you move Jude Bellingham deeper, you bring Cole Palmer in. Who's really the guy that's maybe controlling the game for England? Great players, but I don't know. It's really difficult to predict these attacking positions.
This sort of conversation now around Palmer starts, but this conversation around Palmer coming in for that role that Foden was playing, you're basically just doing the exact same conversation with Foden, but you're replacing him with Palmer.
Yeah, who's more effective?
Don't be afraid. I always think with England, don't be afraid to have world-class players on the bench as options. Let's make the most of the fact we've got probably one of the best depths in the entire world. Let's make the most of that.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's go.
OK, let's do...
Let's keep moving on. Where do you want to go next in terms of players that are going?
OK, so...
There's a couple of nailed on, presumably.
Yeah, OK, so,
Harry Kane
maybe
nailed on.
Lyes doesn't agree necessarily.
I agree
with
that
this.
he
England's record goal scorer in the
Harry
captain
Kane.
is nailed on.
Whoa, we've got someone bottling it here
hold on.
for the show. You were all, Harry Kane doesn't go.
No, he goes for me.
Harry
No, hold on.
Kane
I did say. Hold on a second. I did say he goes. He's the captain. He has experience, and I still think he can offer you. If you put him one-on-one, if you give me any England player one-on-one in front of goal, I'm taking Harry Kane.
There's no one better.
Yeah.
My issue with Harry Kane is by 2026, what does Harry Kane look like? What shape
still
is
Harry Kane.
Yeah, he looks like him still, but what does his game kind of represent at that point? I do think Harry Kane,
the Euros was for me a reflection of how I believe his game is starting to deteriorate. I think he no longer wants to really engage in physical battles as a center backs. I think at this point in his career, we all used to rave about his ability to drop deep and kind of get play started. But at this point in his career, I genuinely think it's becoming a crutch for him in terms of he doesn't want to engage with those battles so much that he drops deep to avoid them and then tries playing this game where he's feeding players in behind. The problem with England at the Euros was they played with 0 outlets. There was no speed in attack. So he's looking to play these balls in attack to who? Ball to feed guy in Cole Palmer, ball to feed guy in Jude, ball to feed guy.
Yeah, it's not a Rashford and Sterling.
Absolutely. So it really depends who are these attacking positions. So
what I would say is, what other strikers have you got on here?
Yeah,
that's the issue. So that's why I'm bringing him. My whole thing
Who would you go for then?
So
I'd also say 17 goals and 7 assists in 16 appearances this season. He's one of the most informed strikers in the world.
So
He's a goal scorer.
We'll put the rest of the forwards I've got because I was
But
actually.
who else do you say?
I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that.
Gordon midweek, Ollie Watkins.
Grealish go?
Is there a
goes.
possibility, and I'm willing to be told this is a silly thing, Nieve, but is there a possibility that we could have
Running out of space.
3
Just stick it next to
attackers?
Gordon.
3 attackers where you've not got a dead-on centre forward. Do you see what I mean? Like if you've got just 3 attackers who can play all across that front 3 and play together and combine with each other, build relationship. Because I feel like you look at our attacking options. I'd say one of the biggest strengths of all our attackers is their ability to play in pretty much anywhere they feel comfortable, and they'll rotate between. So, like, that's why I picked Harvey Elliott, by the way, because I think he can play in midfield, but also out on the right. Anthony Gordon can play left and he can play right. Palmer can do both of those as well. Gordon can play in the middle as well.
He was massively underutilized for me.
100%. I
So
totally
So
agree.
who's not been included in
Yeah,
this list
just
that we've got on the
reveal
table here, Nieve?
Yes,
that we
so-
think are big talking points potentially.
Rashford's not been included, but again, you know, he could have a brilliant season, and I think on that left-hand side he could prove really valuable, so it could change.
Can we just bring Yasin as a United fan here? Obviously, your thoughts on Rashford and his likelihood to be in the 2026 World Cup squad?
At this current moment, I would say it's unlikely. I think he's looking from the outside in. The thing with Rashford is for me, could you disagree really? I look at his form over the last season and a half now. It's not encouraging. And I think Rashford, obviously, when he's on it, provides you so much. Again, in terms of an outlet, in terms of what he can do on the ball, his ball striking. But I just find Rashford at, 27 years old now, is still a little too patchy for my liking to rely on.
I think I was uffing more, almost at the other 4. At Bowen, Solanke, Madueke and Eze.
I think Madueke
when
in
you know you've
particular
got
right now.
Harvey Elliott in there, who isn't getting loads of minutes currently in this slot side. He's had
Yeah, but
injuries at the
the
start of the
injuries,
season
though.
as well.
That's why.
Jack Grealish not getting loads of minutes in that Man City squad. Whereas Bowen, I feel like whenever I watch Bowen,
No,
he's very rarely puts a foot wrong.
But do you ever, when you watch
consistent.
Jared Bowen, look, yeah, in the Premier League, incredible. But don't you think when Jared Bowen makes a step up to the England team, it never really feels like he belongs at that level? I'm not saying that makes it sound
when he
harsh,
comes on for England is genuinely quite impactful on that right-hand side.
Me not including Bowen's not a reflection of Bowen. It's more the sort of. I've had a bit of fun, and I've gone with players who I think could really build relationships with each other on the pitch and enjoy those little passes between each other, passing it around defences. One of my favourite things with Curtis Jones finally getting into that England team was that you could see straight away he was building relationships with the players around him, and they were enjoying themselves. And I think that these guys that I've picked would have a really good time and enjoy themselves on the pitch and build those relationships.
I think you've very noticeably got a lot of technical players in there.
Yeah,
I think that's important.
Exactly.
The other thing that's quite noticeable as well, I'm sorry, I'm looking at a lot of magnets here, but I think I'm right in saying you've only got 2 out-and-out strikers in Kane and Watkins. If you're both talking about the issues with game time, with the fact that Kane might need to be utilised with other players, do you not need another striker?
Can I throw in a rogue shout? 2026, right? We're predicting the future here.
Please do.
Things could look so different in 2 years. Every year I feel like we say, oh, this is the team that England have. In 2 years, someone new comes up. I think one to watch out for in 2 years is Liam Delap. I'm not saying there's a guarantee that he's going to be England's striker in 2 years, but I think I look at his trajectory and how good he's been for Ipswich this season. I wouldn't be shocked in 2 years if he's kind of knocking on the door for that England squad.
We love a rogue shout on this show, and to be fair, it's a good season, isn't it?
I think he's the highest under-21 goal scorer in league play
He's having a very good season.
in Europe.
I'm impressed.
I think he's got 6 league goals, and I don't think any under-21 player's got more.
His overall game is so good at the moment.
It's just that it's outrageous the options we've got. Even players that aren't on this board, players like Elliot Anderson, Lewis Miley as well at Newcastle. You know, Morgan Gibbs-White. It's like you know we've got such a ridiculous amount of depth, and I just think we should lean into that. And Tuchel should not be afraid to not pick big names if it doesn't match what he wants to do.
I completely agree.
Because I don't think the gap between basically some of the top players in the Premier League. I don't think the gap between them and the world-class names is big enough to have the world-class names playing in a position that they don't suit.
Yeah.
You want the players who match that position.
Yeah, that was evident midweek, wasn't it? 9 players pulling out, but England still win comfortably.
Impossible.
Squad's depth.
To talk about everyone as well.
Yeah, let us know what you think at home.
Rodgers, didn't we?
Oh, Morgan Rogers.
You know,
Oh, he'd be on my team.
yeah.
He'd actually he'd be on the plane.
He's a freedom individual
Yeah,
player
yeah,
as
yeah.
well, so he would like break the system.
So tough.
Morgan Rogers would have gone for me.
Can't talk about every player, a lot of players.
What do you guys think?
Andrew Gomez. Well, let us know what you think. There's confirmation. So the top half is who Nieve would take in the 26-man squad. A selection of other names we've selected, and we've obviously verbalised the rest. Let us know what you think of that. Is that squad good enough to win the World Cup? I think it is.
I agree.
Keep the faith.